Hey everyone, I'm Natalie Ivy, and today I tackle a pressing question for today's evolving workplace. How do you investigate misconduct when your employees are behind screens instead of in the office? From Zoom interviews to digital evidence, we'll explore the pitfalls and best practices of conducting investigations in remote and hybrid settings. And if you're navigating complaints where visibility is limited but risk is high, this is the episode you can't afford to miss.
Welcome to the HR Investigations Podcast, exploring the issues, challenges, strategies, and solutions. Sponsored by RPCHR and hosted by Natalie Ivy, an HR consultant, licensed PI, and author of the best-selling book, How to Conduct Internal Investigations, a practical guide for human resource professionals. And now, here's Natalie.
Hey everyone, welcome to the HR Investigations Podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Ivy, and today I'm going to dive into a topic that's become more relevant than ever, investigating misconduct in hybrid and remote environments. Well, over the past few years, remote and hybrid work, they've gone from being the exception to really kind of the norm in a lot of organizations. But while we certainly have made adjustments to technology and communication styles, expectations, a lot of companies are still kind of playing catch up when it comes to how do we investigate employee misconduct in kind of this new era. All right. So today I'm going to walk you through the unique challenges of investigating remotely, common types of complaints that come up in remote hybrid settings, some tools, techniques, and some things to help you in gathering evidence and help you with conducting interviews and also addressing the issue of confidentiality. And then how do you stay compliant and mitigate risk where the visibility is kind of limited? All right, let's kind of dig in here. Well, why are remote investigations different? All right, well, obviously they're harder because people are not really in the same space. You are not interviewing someone in the same room, so that's part of it. But also, when you have people who are just working remotely, they're not in the same room. And visibility and access is sometimes a little bit trickier, all right? And that also means visibility and access to evidence can be more limited. In traditional workspaces, brick and mortar, right, you can observe body language in interviews. You can quickly go and get your physical evidence, like maybe surveillance video from your security team. You can even kind of get that sort of grapevine, or what we call the coconut telegraph here in Florida, with the chatter. You're going to hear things if you keep your ear low enough to the ground. You're going to kind of hear what's brewing. Well, with remote or hybrid work, you're not able to really get some of that. You're going to have to rely on Slack messages, maybe reports of Zoom behavior. You're going to have to look at screenshots and then metadata and looking at access logs. That means we have to really kind of shift our methods, but without actually compromising the integrity or certainly our neutrality in conducting the investigation. Well, what are some of the kind of typical misconduct cases? All right, what am I seeing? Well, I'm definitely seeing harassment via digital platforms. And it goes everything from inappropriate messages in Slack or Teams, and even private social media DMs, direct messages between team members. I'm seeing also a lot of this, allegations of productivity and time theft accusations. And quite frankly, I've talked about it before on my podcast, dual employment. I've had several clients in which that really has been the last 2 years, the case du jour, are employees who have a side hustle and they're kind of disappearing. All right. So allegations of them kind of working, but not really working. Conflicts over communication etiquette. All right. That's also sometimes what can be missing in the digital space. Sarcasm, tone, and even misinterpreting messages. This can lead to claims of hostile work environment, harassment, bullying, and then also inclusion and favoritism. Remote employees can often feel a little sidelined from projects versus the in-office staff, right? So they feel oh, well, because I'm not really able to chatter with the boss down the hallway, I'm kind of out of sight, out of mind. And there is some truth to that, all right? But this means that we have to kind of really reevaluate how we define and even collect evidence. All right, let's go through some practical strategies and help you with your approach. All right, number one is when you're looking at digital evidence, you need to be thoughtful about it. Well, that also means you need to know who your custodians are of the evidence. So that means if you have a security team, an IT team, who are those custodians that are going to help me? Who do I need to get approval from first before I go get it? And that means you have to take a look at things like access logs, chat histories, email threads, project management tool data, if you have a specific project management solution, anywhere you've got interactions happening with your team members. But then you have to look at the authenticity of that and also preserve timestamps. And here's a tip. You want to use screen recording tools, or you could have your IT partner preserve those logs before you reach out to any of the involved parties. And particularly when you might have a pretty serious harassment allegation, that's important that you get that. You definitely want to approach your virtual interviews with a bit of preparation. I've said it numerous times in my previous podcasts, and those of you who have attended any of my training programs, you've heard me say this numerous times. The fly by the seat of one's pants approach is certainly not going to help you. You have to have interview questions prepared, and especially when you're going to be doing virtual interviews, you definitely need to have that prepared just like you would if you were sitting in a room with someone, like a conference room. You want to have your video on unless there's a compelling reason not to, but do keep in mind sometimes you just may not be able to have the video on. Look, sometimes folks might work in a rural area, they work from home, and they may not necessarily have the ability to have the video on. It pushes through, a lot of data, and sometimes bandwidth just isn't there. All right, then go with an old-fashioned phone call, but try to use video as much as you can. You certainly want to prep the witness regarding any need for specific confidentiality, and that also means who else may be present. That means even at home, who else may be around. Are they alone? If you are meeting with somebody on Zoom and they do happen to be in their office, confirm who else is around. And even if you can't see them on camera and you just want to say, I would like to have an affirmation from you that there is no one else in the vicinity that will be able to hear our conversation. All right. This is particularly so when you're dealing with very sensitive and serious cases. You then also want to pay attention as you are moving through the interview, long pauses, repeating of the question, evasive answers, and also answers that really sound like they've been completely rehearsed. Or maybe if it's exactly the same thing that somebody else said. And all right, yes, there can be some fact patterns with like specific quotes that were used, yes. But what I'm getting at is maybe it's I'm telling a story that really almost seems identical. Okay, that's a little bit where, you're going to want to delve into that a little bit more. You also have to allow a little bit more time for building rapport with virtual interviews. So that means strategically, you're going to need to book a little bit more time on your calendar. When you're face to face with someone, you have facial expressions and you just sense the demeanor and the energy in the room. It's a little harder with a virtual interview. So make sure that you're building enough kind of warm-up questions that are kind of softball questions in order to build that rapport. All right. You also have to think about what kind of meeting platform you are on. For some of you, depending on the nature of your investigations, you may have some very serious things that you'll be discussing. So make sure that you're on an encrypted meeting platform and use your headphones if anybody around you could possibly overhear your interview. The other thing about virtual interviews that you have to think about is documenting differently. You have to take detailed notes, but also note the context. You're not really getting body language kind of the same way. So you want to jot down the tone, the cadence of the voice. Did it speed up? Did it slow down? Did you really have, after a certain question you asked, a very long pause? Were there some serious environmental distractions? Hey, that's important. Did this employee's Maine Coon cat, I used to have one named Forrest Gump. That's why I said that. Did their Maine Coon cat kind of walk across the computer 5, 6, 7, 8 times? And then they got a little distracted. Well, of course, you need to make note of that. And certainly I would have rewound a little bit my questioning to kind of get through that disruption. That way you're getting a little bit better of a read on how they're responding. All right. The other thing you want to do is make sure you are collaborating with IT and legal proactively. They can be your best friend, legal and IT. That means IT is going to help you in preserving digital communications. They can look at log in, log off times on a system. They're also going to be really your friend with validating metadata. Like if, let's say, a photo was presented as evidence. Okay, well, they're going to want to look into the metadata. In other words, where was that taken? Looking at it for kind of validity. Is it looking a little kind of fishy with what photographs been presented? Has it been altered in some way? Also, metadata with email. Look at the origin of an email. Okay. Legal, of course, is certainly going to help you with, giving approval for you to look at maybe unauthorized access. Sometimes it may even require upper level IT approval for some of you to get into specific systems to see who did it. Like in banking, as an example, a lot of times HR is not necessarily going to have access to looking at like watermarking, which is almost like a fingerprint where someone touched and created a transaction, and looking at a trail of like a watermark trail. Those are things that often require upper level access. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the mistakes and some things that I see HR professionals make when dealing with remote cases. All right, number one is forgetting to ask for screenshots. Look, don't rely solely on like descriptions of a message. Ask for the evidence. And you want to make sure you have a specific repository for where you're collecting the evidence. And also don't ignore the impact of isolation. Look, remote employees sometimes may take a little while before they're going to really report the misconduct. They kind of feel maybe a little disconnected, but when they do report it, it could be months later. And that makes sometimes the gathering of evidence a little bit more difficult, right? But nevertheless, you want to actively get on the case as soon as you know about it. All right. The other thing too is assuming that emojis really mean intent. Look, context matters. Somebody who's sending like a little smiley emoji, that doesn't necessarily mean they're being sarcastic or inappropriate, right? It could just be a sign of friendliness or being kind to someone. All right. Now, to recap, when we're conducting investigations in a remote or a hybrid type of environment, it isn't impossible. It's just different, but it also is so commonplace. Even for me, I can tell you the majority of the cases that we work are virtual. We work remote. But when you have the right tools, and tools meaning you've got to have a good investigation interview template, you've got to have a good documentation process, you've also got to make sure you can conduct a thorough and defensible investigation, and you're maintaining confidentiality and protecting your organization, especially some of you that might have patented information, trademarked information. And remember, look, your role as an investigator, it isn't just to find facts, it's really to foster fairness and trust, and even when people really aren't sitting in the same room. All right, that's it for me. So thanks for joining me on the HR Investigations podcast. And if you're ready to take your skills up to the next level, don't miss my upcoming 2-day virtual workshop. And this aligns with my new book that's just out, How to Conduct Internal Investigations, a practical workshop for HR professionals on July 23rd and 24th from 11 to 4 Eastern Time, and that will be via Zoom. And look, this workshop, it's not going to be just theory. We're going to really walk through a full mock investigation, and I'm actually going to demonstrate using video clips how to really conduct effective interviews and assess credibility and help you kind of move beyond the proverbial he said, she said, or he said, they said cases with confidence. You're going to walk away with some of those practical tools and some sharper skills and some real world techniques that you can really apply right away. Now, spots are limited. I limit my virtual workshops to ensure that we've got good interaction with the attendees. This is not going to be we're going to have 50 people on a Zoom call, I assure you. Registration cutoff is rapidly approaching. It's coming up on July 16th, so need you to register today and join me for this immersive kind of hands-on training and designed specifically for pros like you. So to learn more, just go to my website at rpchr.com, or you can click on the link in the show notes for today's episode. Until next time, I am Natalie Ivy. Stay curious, stay fair, and keep digging for the truth. See ya.
Thanks for joining us today on the HR Investigations Podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share the show with any colleagues who will benefit from our strategies and solutions. For free bonus resources, simply visit hr-investigations.com. And remember, if you'd like some help with improving your investigative skills, or if your organization is in need of an external investigator to help with the case, please get in touch with us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.